Hi, I'm David. Have you ever had a time when your emotions seem to get out of control and they blocked your ability to think logically? Well, that happens to almost all of us from time to time. I'd like to draw it like this or illustrate it like this so you can see it real quickly. On any issue, there are logical choices. There are options for fixing it that we need to consider. But at the same time that we're going through this process, we are also, all of us, having some level of emotion. And one of the things that we've come to understand is that sometimes when emotions get too big and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, they really pollute our ability to think logically and really work through this part of the equation. Gary Smalley, a Christian psychologist, has a wonderful illustration of this. He has a little piece of pea gravel in one hand and a 10-pound rock in the other. And Gary's standing on a highly polished stage, and he's saying, mostly to young couples, guys, this is mostly for us, but girls, it applies to you too. Gary will say that he and his wife have been married for, say, 25 years. And he'll say, there are some times when I will say something or not say something, do something or not do something, and to me, it only seems like it should impact her like this. And he drops a little piece of pea gravel on the floor and it doesn't do any damage. And he says, I fully don't understand it completely yet because sometimes it will impact her like this instead. Now, Gary refuses to drop the rock because he doesn't want to pay for the damage it would do to the floor. But he says, you can imagine the damage that this would do if it fell on my wife from this height. Now, I don't understand why it hits her like that because I'm operating on a pure logical, on a 1, 2, 3 kind of basis where I'm talking about an issue and what have you, but it hits her in such a way that her emotions just get so big that they block her ability to work with me on the above the line level. What Gary says at this point I think is vitally important. He says that his first responsibility as her husband is not to defend what he said, it's not to try to explain it more fully, but first it is to tend to the emotional damage that he has done, whether it's inadvertent or on purpose. He says sometimes, most of the time it is inadvertent, but sometimes I'm human, and I will say something that lash out at my wife or hurt her. And what I have to do is I have to tend to that wound before I ever expect her to be able to come above the line and work with me on it. Consider this. If I drop this rock on my wife and it has a sharp edge, and it hits her in such a way that she's gushing blood, would it make sense for me to say, honey, I see that you're bleeding down there, but I want to tell you why I said what I said. Pay attention. Point one is, do I do that? Of course not. Do I also say, no, I didn't mean it, I didn't mean it. I hope it didn't hurt you too bad. No, we don't do that either. We do everything we possibly can to staunch the bleeding and to get the damage under control before we ever can expect her to come up above the line and work with us. Now, this works for both men and women. So what we have to consider is, how is our emotion? Is it in a healthy balance? Is it normalized? Or has it gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and is it blocking my ability to think logically? And if it is blocking my ability to think logically, it's tough going to try to think logically and to think of options without bringing it down and normalizing the emotions. So just take every now and then when you get into a disagreement with somebody, whether it's a spouse or a friend or a coworker or an employer, check your emotions, take your emotional pulse. And if you find that your emotions are a little out of control or a lot out of control, do some things like do some deep breathing, take a time out, go for a walk, do some thinking about how I can normalize these emotions. And once the emotions are normalized, then I am free to come back here and tackle these hard subjects on a logical and on a well thought through basis.